Hello everyone, today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different. So today, we're going to be talking about something that sets native English speakers apart from most second language learners, and that is the use of idioms and idiomatic language in English. Now, when taking any kind of English exam or test, such as the TOEFL or the IELTS, or even the exams that you'll be taking in school, these idioms can boost your score if used properly. But what is an idiom? An idiom is usually a fixed combination of words that has a different meaning than it should literally. These words in a specific combination have a different meaning that is often difficult to understand just by looking at the words that are used to make an idiom. Similarly, when you separate all of it and when you try and translate this phrase separately, it may not make sense. For example, let's take the phrase, "It's raining cats and dogs." When translating this sentence literally, it may sound like you are saying, "Cats and dogs are falling from the sky." However, to rain cats and dogs means to rain heavily. It means that it is raining outside, or that it will rain outside, or that it has rained outside, and it rained a lot. Thus, this phrase has what we call an idiomatic meaning. So, as you can see, you cannot understand the meaning of an idiom by analyzing all of the words individually or by analyzing all of the words literally. Instead, you need to understand the symbol or the metaphor behind each phrase. But if you think about your own language, then I'm sure you'll realize that you use plenty of idioms every day. Now, idioms are based on everyday things and objects. For example, the human body, or colors, or food, or animals, like in the previous example. Idioms can also be constructed in a variety of ways by combining different parts of speech. Let's look back at some idioms that we came across in previous lessons and see what some of the patterns for forming them are. In lessons 3 and 4, you heard the idioms a black sheep and a couch potato. In this case, are we actually talking about a sheep of black color or a potato lying on the couch? No, of course not. We're talking about people. In the first example, people who are different from the rest because of their embarrassing behavior. Or for couch potatoes, people who spend a lot of time sitting and watching television. Thus, idioms can be represented by a noun phrase, couch potato, black sheep. In lessons 7 and 21, however, there were the idioms to get one's foot in the door, or to catch one's eye. Do you remember these? So to get one's foot in the door means to manage to enter an organization or a business or a career field that can bring you success. Or to catch one's eye simply means to attract someone's attention. As you can see, these idioms are formed according to the verb plus object construction that can be further supplemented by an adverb of place, as in the first example, or by a preposition. And sometimes idioms can represent whole completed sentences. For example, do you remember in lesson 13, "It's not my cup of tea," which means I don't really like it. It's not really something that is very likable to me. There are also another group of idioms called binomial idioms, which are constructed by using two words and a conjunction, usually and, but, or. These are quite widespread in the English language, but in our lessons so far, we've only come across one binomial idiom, which was in lesson 25, and that was gloom and doom, the feeling of pessimism, of overwhelming pessimism. Now, the last possible type of idioms, which we haven't seen yet, are constructed with the help of the words like and as, and these are called similes. And these use comparison or similarity to convey their meaning. For example, when I say John is as cool as a cucumber, do I mean that John looks like a cucumber? Or that maybe he's a green color? Of course not. what I mean is that he is not emotional. He's relaxed. So one more time, let's have a look at all of the possible idiom types put together. First, we can have idiomatic noun phrases like black sheep, verb with an object, idiomatic sentences, not my cup of tea, binomial idioms, or two words joined by a conjunction, and finally a comparison or similarity using like or as, or a simile. Now, let's focus on learning several more idioms for each type. Up first is drop in the bucket, which is a preferred variant of the idiom in American English, a drop in the ocean, for British English, and it means an amount of something too small to make a difference. For example, in the sentence, the money raised was a drop in the bucket compared to what we needed. Another example, the idiom the apple of someone's eye is used to refer to a person or thing that is loved or appreciated more than any other. For example, Jenny has always been the apple of her father's eye. Passing on to the second type of idioms, let's consider the idiomatic expression to tighten one's belt. It means to spend less money for some reason because you have less money available. For example, with prices increasing on most products, we have to tighten our belt. Now, this idiom comes from the fact that when people don't have money to buy food, they lose weight. And when you lose weight, you tighten your belt. One more idiom of the verb plus object variety is to sit on the fence. And when we say that someone sits on the fence, or simply is on the fence, we mean that they are trying to avoid making a decision, or they don't know which decision they are going to make. I'm just saying that they're indecisive. For example, I don't know which of the candidates he's going to vote for. He's still sitting on the fence. He still has not made a decision. Now, some examples of idioms that resemble full sentences are as follows. First, money doesn't grow on trees. As you can probably guess, this means that money is not very common, and it's not good to spend money in a careless way. For example, if a girl, let's call her Clarissa, wants a car for her birthday, she may ask her father, "Dad, I'd like a car for my 18th birthday." And her father, like my father, will tell her, "We can't afford it. Money doesn't grow on trees." One more example of this type of idiom is the phrase, which you have probably also heard before, "time flies," that is used in a situation where you feel like time has passed very quickly. For example, in the phrase, "How time flies. I remember you as a little girl, and today you're getting married." Here I'm saying that it seems like no time at all has passed. It's passed so quickly I didn't even notice it. While some of the idioms discussed above should be avoided in formal or professional or academic writing, there are quite a few binomial idioms that are quite neutral in their meaning, and their usage is okay in any kind of writing. For example, the phrase pros and cons, which is an idiomatic synonym of advantages and disadvantages. For example, before starting the project, we need to weigh all the pros and cons. Another example of this was also ups and downs, which refers to a mixture of good and bad things that happen in somebody's life or relationship. For example, every business has its ups and downs. And last but not least, some of the idioms that are based on similarity and comparison, for example, as easy as pie, are used to talk about something quite easy. For example, if I say, "How did the English test go?" you could tell me, "No problem, it was as easy as pie." You may also hear this idiom as easy as cake. Both are okay. We can also express the idea of comparison, as we've already mentioned, with the help of like. Just like in the idiom, "like talking to a brick wall." Here, this means that communication with this person is very, very difficult because they are very, very stubborn, or there is no reaction or response. For example, I tried to discuss the problem with him, but it was like talking to a brick wall. So, how do we use idioms? Keep in mind that most English idioms are quite informal, so use them very carefully. But at the same time, there are many other idioms that you will hear very commonly in English literature or fiction or TV shows or magazines, or you may even hear in day-to-day conversations. So, for example, one informal idiom is to hit the nail on the head. Now, this means to be exactly correct or to do exactly the right thing. For example, Bob doesn't say much, but every now and then he hits the nail right on the head. It's an interesting example, as you can see, because we've added an additional word in the idiom, right, to make it sound even more emphatic. Now, all English idioms don't work like this, and you can't just insert additional words or phrases in any way. Let's take a look at this with the example of the idiom safe and sound. Here, if somebody is safe and sound, it means that they are away from danger, that they will not be harmed. However, I cannot reverse the order of these words. If I say that somebody is sound and safe, this idiom loses its meaning entirely, and it does not make sense anymore. An example of an idiom that can be found in both speaking and writing is the phrase a race against time. Like in the example, it was a race against time as staff members tried to keep the struggling company open. Here, a race against time is when I'm struggling against a deadline, or I have to do something within a certain amount of time and it is difficult. Now, some idioms can also be found very commonly in more formal academic or professional contexts, such as lectures or academic writing or business communication. So let's consider some of these idiomatic expressions. First, to think outside the box, or to think about something that is new, to use your imagination, to not think normally. Next, state of the art, using the most modern or the most advanced technology or theory or methods. Next, to cut a long story short, or in a nutshell, to say or express something in a very clear way, using few words. Basically, these just mean in summary, or to summarize. Next, the tip of the iceberg. Only a small part, usually a small visible part, of a much larger problem. Nextly, in black and white, or in a way that makes people or things seem completely good or completely bad, with no middle area. And by the way, the idiom for this middle area is the gray area, what happens when you combine black and white. And next, tunnel vision, or the inability to see something other than what is directly in front of you, like you're looking through a tunnel. And finally, to open the door to something, to create the opportunity for something to happen. Now, generally speaking, idioms definitely make your speech sound much more natural and your writing sound much more interesting and attention-grabbing. However, you have to be careful not to overuse them because they can make your speech or your writing sound confusing, even for native speakers. And your writing can become very difficult to understand. Let's have a look at the following example. I heard it through the grapevine that yesterday you put your foot in your mouth and spilled the beans about Tom being a love rat. Even if you know the meaning of all of the idioms in the sentence, it's difficult to grasp what the speaker intends to say without reading the sentence a couple of times. Now, do you know any of these idioms? Let's see what they mean. To hear something through the grapevine means to hear something unofficially or by means of gossip or rumor. The usual implication is that the information was passed by person to person, by word of mouth, by speech, not in an email or not by text message, just in a confidential manner between friends and colleagues. Next, the phrase to put one's foot in one's mouth is used to refer to situations when you say or do something which upsets someone or embarrasses someone or even offends someone. Basically, to say something wrong. Next, to spill the beans is to tell a secret or to let someone know information that they were not supposed to know. And finally, being a love rat is to be someone who cheats on their lover, on their spouse, with another person. So, knowing the definitions of all of these idioms, can you guess what this sentence means? Correct. It means that I heard a rumor that yesterday you told somebody about Tom cheating on his spouse and you should not have. But how difficult was it to get that meaning from the sentence with all of the idioms? Pretty difficult, right? Now, unfortunately, there's not a magic trick that you can use to learn idioms. My advice would be to write them down in a notebook by including an explanation as well as examples in context. Don't forget to make a note about an idiom's usage, whether or not it's informal or it can be found in a formal context. And if you feel like being creative, you may want to add a quick drawing as well that will help you visualize what each one of these idioms means. So an example of using pictures to help you understand an example of an idiom would be something like this. If I use the idiom in the black, and it's neutral, that means I can use it in a formal context. What is it? Well, it means for a bank account to contain money, or for a person, a company, or a business to have money, to not be in debt. And finally, I'm going to make a sentence. Well, next I'm going to make a sentence. Despite the financial crisis, the company managed to stay in the black. But I really want to make sure I remember it. So I'm going to make a little drawing here, just to make sure. Now, since you plan to study for a couple of years more, let's wrap up our discussion by considering some idioms related to education and studying. First, to brainstorm, or for a group of people to think about something at the same time, usually with the goal of developing ideas or coming up with more ideas. For example, the students got into groups to brainstorm ideas for the school play. Next, a copycat. A copycat is someone who copies somebody else's work or behavior. For example, the children called her a copycat when they saw her copying the test of another student. Next, to hit the books, or to begin to study hard. After spending the weekend with my friends, I finally hit the books on Sunday evening. Next, to pass with flying colors. To pass a test or an exam with a very high score. I was able to pass the final exams with flying colors. Next, to skip school, or to miss class, not go to class when you should. Bob wanted to skip school, so he pretended to be sick. Next, to put one's thinking cap on, to try and solve a difficult problem by thinking about it. Like in the example, put your thinking cap on and try to think of a better title for your essay. So don't waste time, hit the books, and you'll pass the exam with flying colors. And I'll see you in the next lesson.